Hi, this is Jeff Curto, and welcome to episode number 180 of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography. We have amazing tools at our disposal in today's 21st century photography world. Man, there are such great tools, Lightroom and the sadly departed aperture and other tools that help us to sort through our photographs and rate them and choose which pictures we're going to do post production on and which pictures we won't choose to do post production on. And then even the ability to do most of the post production that we want to do on pictures, adjusting contrast and light and dark and so forth and so on, color balance and where light occurs and where color is and isn't in pictures in something like Lightroom. And one of the things that these tools really allow us to do that is just so powerful is to sort based on a number of different criteria. And all these criteria, of course, are contained within the data that the camera records for us, because the camera records everything about our pictures. What camera we're using, what lens is attached to the camera, what aperture we're shooting at, if it's a zoom lens, which focal length is being used, where the focus points are. Man, every possible aspect of photography is cataloged for us when we catalog our pictures in something like Lightroom. And I find this to be really interesting because, of course, I've come from an era of photography, and when my first steps in photography were made were well before this kind of tool set was available. But one of the things that I always knew was, for example, with the work that I've long done with the large format 4x5 camera, I was pretty clearly aware that the lens that I used most often for the pictures that were most successful for me was the 210 millimeter lens. No matter where I was, what I was photographing, if I had 3 or 4 lenses at my disposal, the one that normally I reached for was the 210 millimeter lens for the 4x5 camera. And for those of you who know a little bit about the large format world, that lens is, slightly longer than normal for a 4x5. So the 35 millimeter camera equivalent of, say, an 85 or 90 millimeter lens. So a slightly long lens. And I suppose I used that information frequently as I made photographs, thinking to myself, well, not only am I reasonably assured of a result that will please me, but also the idea that I would probably use that lens more often because I tuned my vision to putting that lens on the camera. I would place the lens on the camera based on where it was that I was standing with the camera, and I would choose that point of view by virtue of the fact that I knew approximately what the field of view was going to be. So in a way, it became a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that, I kind of tuned my vision to see what the single focal length lens that I had for the camera. I have several lenses for the 4x5 camera, but I kind of became acclimated to the idea that most of the good photographs rather, that I made were made with that particular lens. Now, fast forward to the fact that I have made many thousands of photographs, as I'm sure the rest of you have too, with digital equipment over the last bunch of years now. And now, not only do I have the kind of apocryphal evidence that I had when shooting with a camera that did not record every aspect of what it was that I was shooting, but I now have actual data. So I can spend time looking through the photographs that I made and that I've cataloged in Lightroom and have Lightroom tell me, of the 3 and 4 star images that I have, and we'll talk about rating here in a second, of the 3 and 4 star images that I have, which ones were made with which lenses, which apertures were used. And I can begin to explore a kind of data set that helps me figure out, well, am I more likely to have greater success with this camera lens combination? How many pictures that I make at wide open aperture are successful? How many pictures that I make at a slow shutter speed are successful? It begins to help me look at my photographs in a different way and look at my approach to photography in a different way. And I find that data mining kind of aspect of this to be really, really interesting. And so, in my case, I mean, I can tell you what lenses are the ones that I like the best or the ones that seem to be the most successful, but it doesn't really matter because that's my way of approaching photography. I'd encourage you to do the same thing with your catalog of images, whether you're using Lightroom or you're holding out with Aperture or you're using some other aspect of cataloging your pictures. All of these software programs will tell us something about how we're photographing based on what it is that we're rating the pictures at. And I mentioned rating a second ago, and man, rating is one of those things. There are 5 stars in most of these applications and a bunch of flags and, you know, colors and so forth and so on. So I tend to look at things as clunkers, like, the almost pictures. Uh, those are either 1 star or no stars whatsoever. And of course, I reject and delete all of the really crummy ones, the ones that are out of focus or the ones where I took a picture of my shoe or whatever. But and then I look at 3 stars and 4 stars. 3 stars are the ones that are pretty good. 4 stars are the ones I know are quite good. And I usually reserve 5 stars for those really great once in a lifetime kinds of images. Because I always hope, as my friend Julianne Cost always says, I rarely rate anything 5 stars because I hope I'm going to get better. I like that strategy, right? So the idea that what we can do is we can use this data set to look at the way we photograph. What lenses do you use most often to successfully make photographs? What cameras, if you have several different cameras, do you get better results using one camera over another? Do you have an aperture preference? If you were to look at your entire catalog of thousands of images, what is the most frequently used aperture in your arsenal or range of apertures? If you find that most of the pictures that you like best are shot with the middle apertures, wouldn't that tell you that maybe it would be a good idea to use aperture priority and set your camera on that aperture for a day's worth of shooting and find out what happens? Or find out what happens if you set it at an aperture where you have the least success, and how can you overcome that problem? So begin taking a look at your data set. I think it's a really interesting set of rainy day kinds of opportunities for us when the weather is too inclement to go out and photograph, or we just, it's too late at night, or some other aspect of why we wouldn't be photographing and we're sitting in front of the computer with our large catalog of images. Begin to look at your data set. Find out what it is that your set of searches can bring you in terms of the information about which lenses work best for you, which lenses do not work as well for you. I know for a fact that I have a super long lens that I bought, I was excited about, and golly, I haven't really gotten much out of it. Maybe I need to turn that lens into some money to give me some other tool that might be useful to me. It certainly means that I don't usually pack it in my camera bag when I'm going to go photograph. So use the data set, figure out what it is that you do well and what it is that you could improve on using the data that you have in your arsenal of information that our modern tools give us. So find out what you do and use that as a new way of looking forward into your photographic future. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Camera Position, the podcast about the creative side of photography.